Welcome to Astrology Investigates, and today we are looking at the mystery that is Ron DeSantis, also known as Ron DeSantis. He is the governor of Florida in 2021, who seems to have some difficulty understanding that if you kill off all your constituents because of COVID, you won't have any constituents left to vote for you. His behavior has been mystifying many of us, and we're going to look at his chart today and the transits to see if we can determine what exactly is going on with this guy. Ron DeSantis, the governor who tried to kill all of Florida. So if you're not familiar with American politics or, politics around here in general, Ron DeSantis is the governor of Florida who's made a series of really awful decisions that have led to just the pandemic that is COVID, just spiking over and over and over again in Florida. And if you're not familiar with Florida, some of the other things you want to keep in mind with Florida is that it is a significantly large population of retirees, and a large portion of their business comes from, their economy comes from tourism. So it's not a great place. I mean, there's no good place to have a hotspot for a pandemic, but that is certainly, definitely not a good place to have it. And also, too, at one point he was fighting with the cruise ships about requiring them to allow people who were not vaccinated to onboard the ships. And just recently, this is August of 2021 that we're doing this, just now he's mandating that the schools must let students back in without masks. They can't require masks, and if they do require masks, the students wear masks, that he is threatening to pull their funding in retaliation. So yeah, so he's not only trying to kill the old people that vote for him, he's trying to kill everybody's kids too. It's mystifying, just mystifying. Now, I have to tell you, I am certainly not the only person in the world who's looking at this guy and wondering whether he is a complete psychopath who enjoys this murder and mayhem he's committing in mass, or if he's having a nervous breakdown, or if aliens have abducted him and, entered his body and are now, wearing his skin, as it were. So I look at this and my thoughts are really like, is this guy a sadist, a psychopath, or is he having a nervous breakdown? It's hard to say which at this point. So we're going to take a look at that. Now, just so you guys know, as of August 8th, 2021, 84 children were hospitalized for COVID in one day on a Saturday. That's huge. And he seems to have no regard for this. And he keeps digging his heels in and refuses to budge and require masks and everything else. There's something really serious going on here, because the guy is either having a complete mental meltdown and is absolutely totally out of touch with reality, or there are much more sinister things afoot, which, are involving his self-destruction and demise. So let's take a look. Alrighty. So this is the chart for Ron DeSantis. He was born September 14th, 1978, in Jacksonville, Florida. Now, we do not have a birth time for him, so ignore any houses that you think the planets are sitting in, because those houses are arbitrary. We don't know where exactly the planets are sitting. We just know what sign and aspect are making to each other. So Mr. DeSantis is a Virgo. He's got the Sun and the North Node together. In middle degrees of Virgo, the Sun's at 21, North Node's at 26, and he's got Zeus also at 17. So with Sun, North Node, and Zeus together like this in the sign of Virgo, it would necessarily make somebody a specialist, and it also makes someone sympathetic to or would excel in environments where firearms and artillery and things that explode and things that create or generate great power are located. Now, we do know he has a history with the Navy, which makes all kinds of sense, and he did in fact excel in his career in the Navy. Now, he has a Mercury-Saturn conjunction in Virgo, and this is an interesting aspect because Mercury in Virgo is extremely anal retentive and detail oriented, right? Saturn in Virgo is very thorough, and Saturn in Virgo typically reinforces this need to know more, know more, know more. So there's a bit of this skeptical mind there, and also a great insecurity that they don't know enough. So they often will go through things with a fine-tooth comb, you know, until they're almost experts in whatever it is that they're analyzing. They're great analysts. Here's the rub though, right? With Mercury in Virgo, and especially combined with Saturn, so Mercury and Saturn together in Virgo, gives you a person who typically can't see the forest for the trees. So this person often gets so bogged down in minutia, or the immediate petty things, or the small details of things, that they have a very difficult time seeing a bigger, broader vision. So Mr. DeSantis would be very, very good at what would be considered clerical work, right? Going through things with a fine-tooth comb and looking for, you know, the flaws, mistakes, and the details. However, in terms of having a grand plan vision and being able to see further out than right now today, he's at a bit of a disadvantage. He's not a visionary by any stretch of the imagination, not with a Mercury-Saturn conjunction in Virgo, no less. So that's a challenging position for him to have. Now, this, in combination with all of this, he's got the Moon in Aquarius. So with the Moon in Aquarius, we expect somebody who's much more open-minded, much more progressive. Again, Aquarius is the sign of the future, so somebody who's very future-oriented and has a broader, bigger vision for the world and how things should go, right? So they don't think of small plans, they think of great, grand plans. But that's not necessarily always the case when you start combining these planets together. So with Sun, Mercury, and Saturn all together in Virgo, we've got somebody with a heavy emphasis on details and the here and now, what's right in front of them. Literally, they can't see the forest for the trees syndrome, in spite of the fact that they have this Moon in Aquarius. So what will happen, what we might see, and we're certainly seeing it now with this Moon in Aquarius, what that does is once he gets fixated on something, right, something smaller, pettier, or immediate, that's when that stubborn Aquarius tunnel vision kicks in. So the thing with Aquarius and Uranus is they can be they can be very rigid in their behavior, because once they lock into something, that's it. They've made up their mind, and we're done now. We have done our scientific examination of these things in the process, and this is what it is. So Aquarians, much like Virgos, right, do not like to be wrong. They love being right more than anything else in the world. They love being right, and they hate being wrong. So when you've got Virgo and Aquarius together in the same chart, oh my Lord, you've got somebody who's not only a know-it-all, or in his case really believes and wants to be a know-it-all because of that Mercury-Saturn conjunction in Virgo, but also they hates being wrong. That Moon in Aquarius coupled with those Virgo planets makes it impossible for him to ever admit that he doesn't know something or that he's wrong about something. So he will dig into some bizarre, weird idea of something, and he will cling to it like his life depended on it. And, you know, I mean, there are people who do this with other planetary placements, and certainly we could say that we're only saying that because we're seeing it now, but I'm sure if you ask people who live with him, like, they'll tell you, like, he's a little weird that way. He doesn't like being wrong, and if you challenge him, he will dig in. No matter how ridiculous his line of logic is, he will stay with it as if his life depended on it, because he refuses to admit that he was wrong about something. Ooh, yeah, you want that for a governor, don't you? Well, listen, at least he's not in charge of the military for the country. So we got that going for us. Okay. Oh, Lordy. Sorry. Okay, now he has Venus in Scorpio and he has Uranus in Scorpio. And this, you know, these present some interesting bits of information. His Venus, now, interestingly, his Venus opposes Chiron and Admetos. So Venus and the Venus in Scorpio just further emphasizes these things. So Venus in Scorpio, again, is very stubborn. And with Venus in Scorpio, he really enjoys money and power, but power more than money. Power and influence is the thing that gets him off. And with Venus opposing Chiron and Admetos in his chart, there are some heavy karmic prices that he has to pay for his lust for power and influence. So he's brought all of this with him from a previous lifetime, if you believe in that sort of stuff, or he's fine-tuned it in this lifetime. But whatever it is, that Venus in Scorpio loves power and control like an alcoholic loves liquor. Can't get enough and will drink from that bottle to their destruction. With Chiron involved with that Venus, this absolutely guarantees that there will be destruction with this. So, speaking of which, also too, there is the very distinct, because Chiron in Taurus also is very gluttonous, right? So there is there's the very distinct possibility that Ron DeSantis may have a closet addiction problem. So he may actually very well be an alcoholic. Much like our friend John Boehner, who used to show up regularly looking like he had just finished drinking. But Ron DeSantis may actually have an addiction issue that he's got under wraps, or at least away from public view for the most part. And that would certainly explain some of this weirdo thinking that he's doing. Okay, so there's that. Now, I'm not saying he's an alcoholic or drug addict. I'm just saying that the propensity for overindulgence and excessive gluttony in the things that he really enjoys are certainly there. And, power and influence and control are more important to him than drugs or anything like that. But if he were to make the mistake of going down that road, he would be extremely difficult to break from his addictions. Okay, now he has Venus and Uranus close. They're not tight, but they are close together in Scorpio. So this suggests, and he's got Cupido around that Venus too. So I'm not going to get too much into this because one, it's speculation, and two, it's speculation. But I will say that he has a predilection for some unusual things when it comes to his personal or intimate life. Now, I am not I'm not a judgmental person when it comes to things that make people happy, as long as it involves two consenting adults, human adults. I mean, whatever works for you is fine by me. However, I will just say, and creative people are the best kind of people. Like if you're an adult and you've ever been married, marriage is a long walk through life with the same person. So creative people always get thumbs up from me, right? But when it shows up in a chart like this, and also remember, this is a man who likes power, influence, and control. And Scorpio, the heavy emphasis in Scorpio, also, and with that Chiron, right, also tends to, Venus in Scorpio likes to explore taboo things. So whatever's off limits that they're not supposed to have, they're kind of into that, or at least to thinking about it, if they don't actually do it at some point. So temptation is literally their Achilles heel. With Venus and Uranus together in Scorpio, what you have is somebody who sees temptation and decides that temptation needs to shake hands with it. They need to shake hands with temptation because they're going to give temptation a spanking or two. No, I'm just kidding. Sort of. But there's definitely some stories there, and more than I'm going to get into here. But I will say that at some point, those little skeletons in his closet may have a huge factor in what's going on these days. So let's move on to the rest of the chart. We'll get away from the titillation section, and we'll go back to the rest of the chart. Now, he has Mars in Libra. And it is conjunct the trans-Neptunian Poseidon. Mars is in late Libra. It's at 26. It's not quite the very end of the sign, but it's certainly there, and it's at 26. And, excuse this. There is no part of fortune because we do not know what time he was born. I am so sorry. So with Mars and Libra, the thing with Mars and Libra is, one, it's a great placement for a politician because Mars and Libra is very conflict avoidant. They do not like conflict at all. As a matter of fact, some people even call Mars and Libra cowardly. But they're not. Mars in Libra is diplomatic, and Mars in Libra would rather kill you with kindness than kill you with a bullet, because Mars in Libra also knows that someday, you're going to repay them for this. So, what the what is it? The forgiveness they give you now is literally an investment into a favor that you're going to owe them later. So, and with that Venus and Scorpio, this totally underscores all of this. So he's very much about relationships and not quid pro quo, but you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours kind of arrangements. So he won't fight or argue or go into open conflict. That's not his nature. He is much more interested in running a tab, right? So he will remember these things and he will bring them up and remind you. You remember that time that you blah, blah, blah. Well, listen, buddy, you owe me now. So I need a favor. That's his way of doing things. Now, the other thing is that when people approach or problem solve in that way, it also means that they, often can find themselves or get themselves in positions where they are beholden to other people. So it's entirely possible that Ron DeSantis may have himself spread out in 6 different directions to other people that he is beholden to for favors they have done for him. So, things that make you my friends. Right. Also, just a little note about the moon. The moon is not at 22. I left the degrees there because this chart is set at noon. So that moon is going to be either a little earlier than 22 degrees or a little bit later. The chances of it being all the way into Pisces are pretty slim. He'd have to be born close to midnight, or even, maybe midnight. But we're going to say he's got a moon in Aquarius because that makes all kinds of sense. All right, now he has Jupiter in Leo. And his Jupiter in Leo is squaring his Cupido, and it's making a wide square to his Venus. Wide. I would probably use it because Jupiter is a big, expansive planet, and it's only 5 degrees. So it's there. The square is there. And with Venus Jupiter square, regardless of sign, it's going to expand and exaggerate the appetites. So it's going to make people party harder, make them eat more, drink more, laugh louder. All those Venus activities that are represented in the chart with Jupiter in square to it, it's going to expand, exaggerate, and magnify those things. Unfortunately, for Mr. DeSantis, Jupiter squaring his Venus, which also happens to be in Scorpio, and pulling in that Chiron opposition also means that he is extremely self-indulgent in power plays, baiting for control and influence and all those things that we just talked about that really gets him off. And again, if he is in fact addicted to physical substances, right, like alcohol or drugs or anything like that, as opposed to psychological things, it will be overblown, the addiction, like literally, like it will consume all of him. Now, this isn't to say that he wouldn't be able to keep it mostly low key and under wraps, because there are many, many functional alcoholics and drug addicts out there. And in, political life, when you're up there as a governor or senator, it's even easier, actually, in many ways, to keep that stuff under wraps. And we've seen evidence of this over and over again. So I would keep an eye on that, because there's definitely something there. But in any event, what this certainly does mean is that when it comes to the things that make him feel good, whether it's physical addictions or psychological ones, right? He is the man who will go the furthest, most self-destructive extremes with it, because he literally does not know when to say no or enough. And that's challenging. Now, some things that I also thought that were interesting. His Sun in Virgo is squaring his Neptune. So, again, porous boundaries. And you would think with a Sun-Neptune square that this is somebody who's dedicated to service. And if you step back for a second away from the current tragedy he's dragging us all through, this is a man who's dedicated his life to being of service to people. It makes perfect sense that he has a Sun-Neptune square, because he joined the military. He was a career military person. Now he's graduated from Yale and I think Harvard, So he's got fine Ivy League pedigree education. He does not need to be in the military, but he did, and he made a career out of it. And people who join the military, who stay, not the few years they need to do to get their life together and get college or whatever, but actually stay with it, make a lifetime out of it. These are people who want to serve. They're selflessly serving their country, right? A greater good. People who go into politics, as hard as it might be to believe, there are a lot of people who really do believe that by going into politics, they can be of service to the people around them. Now, you know, some people like, and doctors are no better, right? You think people go into medicine because they want to help people, and that's not always the case. There are certainly people who go into medicine that are only in it for the money and the status. And it's the same with the politicians. There are certainly politicians who only do this for the money and the status. But there are still people in these fields who originally, with the best of intentions, honestly and genuinely went into these things to be of service. Now, how they change and evolve and transform over time is a completely different conversation. But with him, with that Sun-Neptune square, I would say that that's what we're seeing. So don't get misled by people saying, oh, you know, Sun-Neptune square, deceit, deception, oh, fraudster. I mean, those things could certainly apply, but I don't think that that's actually the essence of what we're looking at here. Now, and also because he's really, you know, in spite of this current insanity that we're dealing with out of him, like, where is this coming from? Oh my God. He's not necessarily an awful person. So there is that. There is that. Okay. Let's see, we covered Uranus, and where's Pluto? Pluto is at 15 Libra. Sorry, kids. Okay, so if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure his Pluto is at the midpoint of his Venus and his Saturn. I'll double check that. So Pluto may be sitting at a midpoint, and if Pluto is in fact at the middle point, like right smack between, or that middle degree right between where Venus and Saturn are sitting, that makes this even more disturbing about this lust for power and influence and control, and these excessive appetites that are never satisfied where those things are concerned because they make him feel good. So we really don't want Pluto there at that midpoint. But it could be. It absolutely could be. And if that's the case, this person who genuinely believes in their mind that they're there to serve other people, the delusion may not be that they're fooling other people, but that they're fooling themselves. So there is that. Without that, if Pluto is not in fact at the midpoint of Venus and Saturn, or Venus and Mercury, Saturn, sorry, Pluto could possibly be trying the moon. Now, we don't know because we don't really know where the moon is, but it's close enough. So Pluto's at 15, the moon's at 22 plus or minus degrees, a few degrees. So we'll say that it is in fact trining the moon. And with that particular situation, with the moon trining Pluto like this, what this will do is this will make him much more compelling and charismatic in a very personal way. So he doesn't seem like much when you look at him in a picture. He's not very photogenic, or maybe he is. I don't know what he looks like in real life. And it's hard to read from like a video or a camera, because that's a whole different way of experiencing somebody. Some people translate beautifully on video, but in person, like all the magic is gone, right? And there are some people who, like Mr. DeSantis, who are extremely charismatic and seductive when you see them in person. Like they're almost like Svengali. They're very hard to resist. But that doesn't necessarily translate in the medium that is called a video. So I would suspect with that Moon-Pluto trine that he has a way of looking at people and talking to people that makes them feel like they're the only person in the room with him. And he's very persuasive. That's the word I'm looking for. He's very persuasive. So I don't know. I mean, if you have ever met this man, I would love to hear your feedback. But this is what we have so far. Okay, so none of this so far has told us what the hell is going on with this man. Has he lost his damn mind? Is he a psychopath? Like, what is going on that is making it okay in his little squirrely brain to basically like kill off all of Florida with COVID? Seriously. So the other thing I would say is, for those of you who for those of you who believe in science and have had a little education and more than 4 brain cells in your head, we all know, right, that the vaccines work, masks work, all of these things are necessary, and the only way we're going to get out of these woods with Jason, the coronavirus chasing us, is if everybody gets on board at the same time, right, and gets their vaccines and puts their masks on and just rides this out together, right? Because every time I get stragglers being left behind, like, we've got to go back and get them, try to save them. In the meantime, Jason, the coronavirus, the ski mask wearing coronavirus with the with a hatchet, is coming around a tree at us. So why would a man with a Harvard and a Yale education, who made it up into the upper echelons of the naval hierarchy, right? This is not a stupid man. This is not a stupid man. Why would anybody with that level of education and understanding and awareness about how these things work suddenly act like a Neanderthal, who thinks that lightning is, the gods throwing, thunderbolts down at the ground? Well, we're all wondering the same thing. And so here's the thing, right? I haven't been paying a lot of attention to him astrologically because I've had a lot of other things that have been kind of taking center stage. But now, and his insanity has been going on for a while, but he's just basically been the point man for all the other crazy people. So I haven't been giving, and it's Florida. Like, what's going on with Florida? There's something about the water in Florida, I swear. Anyway, it's literally, he is the billboard for everything we expect from Florida until now. Now he's literally gone a bridge too far. And even I'm stopping and saying, whoa, wait a minute here. What the hell is happening? Like, is this guy truly sadistic? Like, or a psychopath? Like, is he getting off on this? Like, does he want to kill these people? Or is he having a nervous breakdown? What is happening here? So one of the things I can tell you looking at his chart is he could possibly be a sadist, but if he is a sadist, it would only be in the most fun way. And the biggest thing with him is his sadism. He doesn't like getting his hands dirty. You have to know this man does not like getting his hands dirty. And Mars in Libra is a little bit lazy, and Moon and Aquarius is not very energetic. They're mentally energetic. They're not physically energetic. So if there's a better way to do something or find a machine to do it, and Moon and Aquarius is going to do that. Mars and Libra is definitely going to do that. So with his particular chart, he's not big on unnecessary exertion. And he does not, absolutely does not like to get his hands dirty. The guy's such a freaking clean freak. Oh my God. So which explains why he would have done well in Navy, because clean and orderly, all the things that really work for him. So sadist maybe, but not, I don't see it necessarily in this way, right? So what's left? Is he a psychopath? So, and this brings us back to this whole thing about you can't diagnose a mental illness in a chart. You just can't, right? You can see where there's some stuff going on, but that's not the same thing as being able to identify something from the DSM, saying, oh, well, this is clearly, this. And, leave that to the professionals, okay? Don't run around labeling people, just leave that to professionals. And just for the record, I don't think that's the case either. And because if it were, in fact, a matter of psychosis, it would have shown long before now. So literally, there only is a couple of options. The biggest one being, is he having a nervous breakdown? Well, boys and girls, I'm here to tell you, he just might be. Now, and here's why I say that. One of the things that's happening right now, when we look at his chart, all of the major outer planets from Saturn onward, or Jupiter onward, so Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, all the big hitters in the sky, right, are activating his chart in the hardest ways possible. There is so much external pressure on him from all different sides. He literally doesn't know his behind from a hole in the ground. He doesn't know if he's coming or going. And I'm surprised he hasn't, literally shown up completely drunk at a press conference, or thrown himself off a boat. Whew. There's a lot going on with him in terms of external pressures that are really bearing down on him. Now remember, this is the guy who gets the job done by wheeling and dealing and hustling and banking favors, right? So he's all about the favor you owe him, or in his case, maybe the favor he owes other people. So there's a whole lot of strings that are out there connected to him, and that may be where all this external pressure is coming from, because now it's all coming in to collect. So there's that. But then the other thing too is, even with all of that, there is a level or a point where decency stops you from going further. There's a point where you just can't do worse than whatever this thing is, because your level of decency prevents you from going that far, right? Or because if you don't have any sense of decency and you have no sense of remorse, and you're perfectly capable of justifying these things and doing whatever these things other people would never do for your own entertainment, that's when you become a psychopath. If you look at him during his press conferences and when he's talking about this stuff, this is not somebody who's smiling or happy or is trying to sell you on what a great idea this is. This is somebody who looks very serious, very determined, and very tortured, right? Like they're not happy about having to force these issues. They're not happy about trying to push this stuff. Even when he's trying to sell it as a good thing, he doesn't look happy about it, right? You can feel the tension around him, which is different from 45, who would happily sell you a flaming bag of dog poop with explosives inside and smile while he did it because he just thought it was the greatest thing ever. That's a psychopath. But this is not what I'm seeing with DeSantis. And with all these outer planets putting all this pressure on him, I'm wondering if there is external pressure from people or people bearing down on him all at the same time. So here's the thing, right? Now the question becomes, what would make anybody do something like that, and literally move past their or move their moral compass enough that they can move past what they consider their baseline for decency? Because you think to yourself, like, there's a limit to what you would do. There are some things you're just never going to do, right? Well, I'll tell you, fear, especially fear of exposure, is typically the thing that will drive people to hurt other people before they will allow themselves to be hurt, especially if it's exposure of something that they feel will be deathly humiliating. So Lindsey Graham is a great example, because we know Lindsey Graham's got some really weird stuff going on in his personal life that he does not want anybody to know about. He's spent his entire lifetime being very successful at keeping that under wraps. He's not trying to let the cat out of the bag now. So Lindsey Graham, DeSantis, a bunch of other people. And we also know that 45 and Putin are very good at blackmail. That's their favorite game. So they're absolutely all about finding out your dirty little secrets and leveraging that to get you to do what they want. Because there's nothing about Trump that inspires loyalty. You cannot trust Trump. You cannot believe Trump. He will throw people under the bus in a minute, especially politicians. So there's no reason for any of these politicians to have the insane amount of loyalty to him that they do, or appear to have, except that they're protecting themselves, because somehow, some way, Trump has gotten information about their deep, dark secrets. I can't imagine how that happened. And he's using that for leverage. And fear will make people do all sorts of things they wouldn't normally do. So there's that. And that's what I think is going on here with DeSantis. What his little deep dark secrets in the closet are, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure they're probably as embarrassing as it'll get out, and might even involve, I don't think they involve children, but they may involve things like pre-op transsexuals or something equally like, oh my God, sell it. Okay, anyway, so let's take a look at the astrology. Sorry. Okay, so it's going to do it? Yes. So the first thing is we've got a huge honkin' juicy T-square in this chart, and it's involving the crazy planets. So transiting Uranus is right here, right? And we're going to get it. We're going to get it. His natal Uranus, my ink is not working. All right, hang on one second, we'll be right back. Oh, this is how we're going to do this. All right, so transiting, come back here. Transiting Uranus is right here, right? Now, his natal Uranus is here, okay? And there's your opposition. And we know that the moon is at 22 Aquarius, give or take, plus or minus a few degrees. So right there, we've got a giant honking T-square with the moon as the leg between the rulers of the moon, Uranus, transiting in natal. Now, Uranus in and of itself is a very unstable planet. It's not to make anybody nuts. It's a lot. This whole month of August, we're all feeling that Uranian energy, right? So if you're feeling a little Fruit Loop right now, it's not your imagination. So this double dose of Uranus, a triple dose actually, because the moon is in Aquarius, which is a sign ruled by Uranus, all of these things are creating a tremendous amount of instability and just odd, erratic behavior. Now, remember also too, Aquarius is a very stubborn sign. So and they don't like to be wrong. So if they're put in a position where they might be wrong, like they will dig their heels in and justify some kind of weird wacko logic before they will admit, oh dear God, I might have been wrong. So that's where we're getting a lot of this too, right? This digging your heels in on the most bizarre, stupid things to do, right? Talk about saying to somebody like, do you really want to die on this hill? That's definitely what's going on here. So that's the first thing, right? That is a huge major factor. And also too much of this Aquarian, or not Aquarian, too much of this Uranian energy can actually, in all legitimacy, can create an overload of stress and pressure and energy, mental energy, to the point that somebody does have a mental breakdown. So it is entirely possible that he is reaching critical mass in terms of his mental, what is the word? Mental reserves, or ability to deal with everything that's going on, because he's got a lot going on. All right, now the next thing we're going to look at is the transiting Chiron is opposing his natal Pluto, right? So transiting Chiron is here. And now we've had Chiron in Aries for a while. It's a pain in the ass. I can't wait for Chiron to get out of Aries, because Chiron in Aries has brought us the white nationalists. They're trying to erase us fears. It's brought in all these hyper masculine, exaggerated macho crap with guns and mass shootings and men being terrified that they're not man enough. So they go and blow things up. And just, oh God, please, I can't wait for Chiron to get out of Aries. So that's where we have this now. And he, while this is going on, is also taking it, opposing his Pluto. Now remember, we said Pluto might be, I got to check the calculations, might be at the midpoint or the middle point of that Mercury, Saturn in Virgo, and that Venus in Scorpio. And if that is the case, this is like double indemnity in terms of power mongering and lust for power and influence and control, right? And this appetite that knows no end. If that is the case, and that's where Pluto's sitting at that degree, like right between those two, transiting Chiron, or Chiron that's moving in the sky above us right now, opposing that Pluto is forcing the issue of him literally having a come to Jesus moment and coming to terms with the deep, ugly parts of his psyche that have brought him to this place where he is at the mercy of his own addictions, or he's at the mercy of the debts he has created because of his addictions. That's what this is about. And this is in combination with, let me get this here, that Uranus T-square, right? And remember, Uranus is the truth bringer. So Uranus forces things open. So some people call it the great disruptor. But ultimately what Uranus does is it breaks up the status quo, right? So Uranus bringing up the status quo with unconscious things and unconscious drives and behaviors, and Chiron, right, really forcing the issue about getting real with yourself, getting real and getting honest and addressing those things that you thought were not a problem. This is some big stuff. This is some very big stuff. Now, put that back. At the same time, what is also happening, he's got so much stuff happening at the same time. I don't, listen, if this man doesn't end up literally in a psychiatric institution having a nervous breakdown, he's going to have a heart attack. The other thing that's happening is Pluto, transiting Pluto, is squaring Mars. There we go. Transiting Pluto is making a square to his natal Mars. Now his natal Mars, there we go, is right there. So Pluto squaring your Mars, when Pluto, if for those of you who, as we speak right now, are dealing with this, right, with Pluto squaring your Mars in Libra or your Mars in Aries, okay, this is a very challenging time to have to go through, because what will happen is on the surface, in the outside world, you'll find yourself embroiled in power plays, literally every time you turn around, and sometimes for the stupidest things, right? Literally getting into a power play or a battle with somebody over Pop-Tarts, as an example, right? Just the most bizarre, stupid things. So the thing about it is Pluto will, when Pluto comes around and makes that square to that Mars, is it challenges you, it tests you, right? And it wants to make a warrior out of you. And the only way you can make a warrior out of a man or a woman, right, is by field testing them and battle testing them. So Pluto is going to test you. It's literally your final exam, right? Did you do the work? Are you worthy of this? Can you handle this? Are you who you think you are? And also Pluto is obstruction. So Pluto will also obstruct your efforts at every single turn. Remember the power play over the Pop-Tarts, right? So when we look at it like that, the thing to remember is that it's neutral, right? It doesn't mean that it's good or bad. So right now, Ron DeSantis is experiencing both obstruction of his efforts, because every time he turns around and attempts to do something, he's being blocked, obviously, or having things undone or reversed. The other is power plays over the stupidest things, right? So he's embroiled in all sorts of power plays with all sorts of stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if he's embroiled in retarded power plays in his office over things like paper clips, right? You know, or like literally the water cooler or something, really stupid stuff. Because that's what Mars and Pluto and square do. Now, the thing about it is it doesn't necessarily have to be bad. I mean, this could certainly be, or could have been, and there's still time left for him to redeem himself. This certainly could have been a time when his ability to be a diplomat and to negotiate and compromise and find a bloodless win-win situation and outcome for everybody could have really like vaulted up at a couple of levels and really shine like a star, right? He could have gone that way, but he hasn't. Instead, he's sunk backwards and down into the dredges of the swamp, you know, fighting over the stupidest things. And the thing about it is because, and this is what you guys need to know, if you're carrying Mars in late Libra or late Aries, the thing you got to understand is that if you are not reaching for your higher self, if you're not trying to level up to your higher or highest levels of decency and correct and proper behavior, you're going to lose those battles every single time. You'll be humiliated by your loss over a power play over something stupid like a Pop-Tart. So when they talk about pick your battles, this is that time. But when we talk about picking your battles, ultimately what we're really saying is you're being tested, you're being challenged. Literally, this is battle testing now. We want to make a warrior out of you. We want your Mars to be the strongest, best Mars ever. But you have to make some decisions about your character and how you're going to express that Mars. Because ultimately, what the astrology chart will not tell us is your character development. That's a you thing, and that's what you've done for yourself and how you choose to see the world and what values you've adopted and decided to keep. That will determine your character, and only you can do that. Astrology can't do anything about the choices you make where your character is concerned. Whew, so there's that going on with him, right? I know, it just gets better and better and better. Now he has Neptune, right? Oh boy, just never ends around here. So Neptune and Pallas are down here. Now Neptune, we know, rules confusion and deceit and drug addiction and bad advice, water. And Pallas rules the legal system and justice. So I thought it was interesting that Neptune and Pallas are coming together in this active transit that he is dealing with, right? So Neptune and Pallas together, this particular pairing has a lot to do with the underdog and the unfortunate and the desperate, the people who don't have a voice and don't have power and can't fend for themselves. That is Neptune and Pallas. This Neptune and Pallas, look at this. While all this other stuff is going on, Neptune and Pallas is opposing the sun. So literally it is putting the big spotlight on his Sun North Node conjunction in Virgo. The Sun in Virgo is here to serve. The North Node in Virgo, or the North Node in particular, has to do with the masses, and specifically where you need to go in this lifetime. The South Node is the stuff you've done before. It comes easy for you. These are strengths. They're habits. There's nothing challenging about your South Node. Your North Node is where it's awkward, and it literally feels like learning how to dance if you're not a dancer, right? So suddenly you've got two left feet. You know, you're a genius at everything else, but now the simplest things, remember, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you're all feet and elbows, right? And you feel like a toddler trying to walk again. So the North Node is that kind of awkward for us, right? But it's important that we go there, because in order for us to run, we've got to learn how to walk, right? In order to walk, we got to learn how to crawl. So the North Node is about those steps that we take to move forward and further in the evolution of ourselves, so that we keep moving in the direction of becoming a better version of ourselves. So it's all those awkward learning stages we go through. With the Sun in Virgo and the North Node there, being of service to something or someone outside of yourself is absolutely what this is about. And he has to do that. He must be of service, right? For this Sun North Node to yield its best fruit for him. Here's the challenge, though. Neptune and Pallas are opposing that. So the real demand here, the real demand and the spotlight is focused on the unfortunate and justice, law, right? So he's walking a very, very fine line where he needs to be very, very aware of his responsibilities and duties that involve being of service to the less fortunate, or the people who have no voice and can't speak for themselves, which is older people, homeless people, and children as the top three that I can think of. And he is clearly failing this test miserably. Pallas Athene is very much the warrior goddess, and she's about justice. So what will happen is Neptune and Pallas are going to bring the hammer down, and the consequences for his behavior is going to be much, much worse than any of us could have possibly imagined. So, and this is all compounded by everything else that's happening simultaneously in his chart. The Chiron opposing Pluto, right? The Pluto squaring the Mars, the Uranus involved in a T-square, and now everything literally has reached critical mass. So he's got to do it right. He's got to do it right, because he'll get no exceptions or free passes on making mistakes, especially mistakes that were not necessary to make in the first place. Now, I saved the biggest one as my final one, because this is a doozy, right? So transiting Saturn is right here, okay? And transiting Saturn is in Aquarius, and it's a bit of, I'm not gonna lie, it's been a bit of a headache. But, Saturn is in its sign of rulership. Remember, planets in their sign of rulership have the most strength. Saturn in Aquarius, Saturn is the ancient ruler of Aquarius. So Saturn is technically in its old home. It's in its original stomping grounds. So it has a lot of power right now. And the things that it produces, the very Saturnine and Aquarian things and Saturn in Aquarius things that it produces are extremely strong and extremely unforgiving if you mess this up, okay? So Saturn is setting up a grand cross in chart. Grand crosses are no fun, and I'll tell you why. Now, remember Andrew Cuomo? How could we forget, right? Governor Andrew Cuomo. So Andrew Cuomo had a T-square in his chart, okay? Just like our friend here has a T-square. So he's got the sun. Oop, get out of there. All right, so we have Chiron at Mitos, and Venus with Cupid over there, but mostly Venus, right? And Jupiter. So in DeSantis's chart, his natal chart, he carries already on its own a T-square with Uranus, Chiron, and Jupiter, right? So again, there's a tremendous amount of self-awareness and self-reflection and getting really, really freaking honest with yourself that is required in this lifetime multiple times, but definitely at least once before his lifetime is over. That is the energy and the theme of Jupiter, Uranus, and Chiron all mixed up in a T-square. Right? So there are things about himself that he has got to get honest about, and he's got to have those conversations with himself, and basically he's got to stop lying to himself about these things. Remember, a lot of what's going on with him is not that he's deluding other people as much as he's deluding himself. He's really convinced himself of the wrong things or false things or just crazy things because he cannot admit, or he's unwilling to admit, I should say, that he's wrong about something, right? Being wrong terrifies him more than anything else. So here's the thing. With Andrew Cuomo, he had a T-square set up back when all these, in like April, May, March, February, March, April, in spring of this year, when all these charges all erupted out of nowhere, he had a T-square that formed in his chart. When he resigned just this month, that T-square, there were some planets that moved into position to fill up the empty space, and that T-square became a grand cross. And that basically, as the saying goes, hung him on a cross, and that was the end of the matter. So it brought things to completion, and certainly by making a sacrificial lamb out of him, as it were. But definitely he was hanging on a cross for that. So with that said, DeSantis, right now as we speak, has a grand cross in his chart, and his grand cross involves Chiron, Uranus, and Jupiter, which by nature and original design requires him to get honest with himself, really freaking honest with himself, right? And now Saturn setting up or filling in that empty leg of the T-square and making this a grand cross now, because Saturn does not give you a free pass. Saturn is the accountant. Saturn is consequence. Saturn is the teacher, the measurer, right? So Saturn requires that you take stock and you take responsibility. That's a very Saturnine thing, that you take responsibility and hold yourself accountable to yourself first for your actions and choices and things that you've done, good and bad. And this is what he's dealing with right now, on top of, right, everything else. So this chart looks like a mess, looks like a confetti explosion, but that's kind of probably what the inside of his brain looks like right now. So there's all this external pressure, there's all this stuff, this, come to Jesus moment, like literally there's a whole boatload of stuff happening here. It looks like a 20-car pileup in his life. And all of these things have a lot to do with, basically having to transform and rise to the occasion and be honest with himself. So this is not necessarily that difficult a thing to do. There are circumstances that can force this, and at some point we can do this, but he just keeps digging his heels in deeper and deeper and deeper in all the wrong ways. So while we know that this chart setup with all these things happening at the same time, right, are classically stress and pressure producing enough events that he could absolutely, and I say this with all sincerity, be in the process of having a nervous breakdown right now, and we're watching it. But it could also be that these things are happening, and that has nothing to do with why he keeps digging in deeper and deeper and deeper in exactly all the wrong ways. Like nobody, well, I don't know, maybe people are that crazy. People have done some insane things, and when people are not right mentally and are in crisis, like people, their ability to reason and be in touch with reality, it really is that out there. Like people will self-mutilate because they're having psychotic episodes. So the mind is a powerful thing in terms of telling you all sorts of stuff that's just not true. So it's possible he's that out of touch with reality, but it all is also possible that digging in of his heels, right, and doing or hanging on to the things that are obviously wrong, right? And basically mass murder. I mean, his career is over. He's got to know his career is over. So if you know your career is over, like he's never going to recover from this, why would you dig your heels in and keep making this worse for yourself? Like after all is said and done, there's not going to be a place anywhere in the United States where he's going to be safe. Because people are going to remember him, they know what he looks like, and they're going to remember what he did to Florida. There's nowhere he's going to be safe after this. So why would he keep adding more fuel to this fire, or funeral pyre, depending on what you want to describe it as? So, the thing about it is fear motivates people better than anything else in the world, right? Fear and anger, but fear especially. And if there are things that the expression, I would rather die than have people find out about blank, blank, blank. Well, that may be what's going on here. He's got some stuff with him. And like I said, I'm not going to get too much into it, but there's some stuff with here. And that may have everything to do with this whole business about getting honest with yourself, right? And it's not as simple as he's gay, right? Because these days, being gay is not that big a deal. I mean, it is in some places, but ultimately, it's not like you're saying you're gay in the middle of Afghanistan, which will get you killed. So it's not that, and it's not children. I don't think this is a pedophile thing, but there is, and it's not like Lindsey Graham, who's got all kinds of, oh my. I can't even begin to imagine the weirdness that's going on in Lindsey Graham's personal life. So it's not that extreme either. So I don't think he's having sex with animals. Maybe he is. But whatever it is, it's just out there enough that he would rather die than have people find out about this thing, right? And this certainly does not involve his wife, which makes things even worse. So if this guy, who the other one seems to be so enamored with and so 200,000% supportive of, if this guy has the dirt on this guy, right, and it's some pretty embarrassing stuff, you can imagine that, what looks like a big old love fest between them is not really a love fest, but it's this guy literally trying to save his own skin and just trying to get through this as painlessly as possible. So even if he is losing his career, which he knows is over now, he knows it's over. Like literally, you could be blind, deaf, and dumb and know that DeSantis' career is done. He knows his career is over, and yet he still makes things worse and digs his heels in. So it can only be that he's doing this at the behest of other people who are genuinely psychopathic, right? Because they smile when they're handing you your poison-laced Kool-Aid, because they don't want people to find out whatever this thing is, that they would rather die than have get out there in the public world. That's just my thought. If you remember back in the 2020 election, across the nation, Democrats were winning by landslides because of the debacle that had been the previous administration, or the Trump administration, and that we're still cleaning up from behind. So this particular election was really striking and caught national attention, specifically because the margin, the victory margin was so razor thin. It was amazing. So DeSantis only beat Gillum by 38,000 votes, which is nothing, literally nothing. It's like a strand of hair at such a thin margin. And this was really unexpected because Gillum is a very, very strong candidate, and anybody having anything to do with the Republicans had not, even though Florida is apparently a red state populated by geriatrics, it's not, they were not happy with things that were going on. So that real thin margin was a little suspect, right? And a couple of other places, like Mitch McConnell and Kentucky, there's no way he could win by the landslide he did. So there were a couple of states where things were a little fishy in terms of these people getting elected against what should have been the popular vote for literally anybody else. In these states and these particular candidates like DeSantis and McConnell, honestly, Donald Duck could have beat them. They were so not warmly received in their home states, right? And yet they won by margin, by significant margins in some cases. Against all odds. Talk about, ghosts and dead people voting. Anyway, so here's the thing. I thought about this, and I'm going to leave this up to you to consider as a possibility as well. So perhaps Ron DeSantis does not have some secret, weird love peccadillo he doesn't want people to know about, right? Maybe that's not it at all. Maybe, and I don't know what the laws are about election rigging, maybe the real fear he has that is driving him to do stupid things is going to prison. And maybe his fear of going to prison is connected to someone who did him a favor. The same favor he repaid when he signed that big tech bill and censorship bill. So he may be in the process, because remember, he's beholden. That's the way he operates. All favors here, favors there. He's beholden to more than a few people who are definitely, everybody's calling in their favors now. But I'm wondering if this narrow margin of votes was not necessarily that narrow in his favor, and there's some election rigging that had gone on that he owes someone else a favor for, which would also explain his lips permasealed to that man's flabby potato behind, because people that Trump has done favors for, if you'll notice, in Congress with the senators, those are the ones who previously were huge critics of him and have turned around and now can't sing his praises enough. So typically in these situations, it's only one of two things. Either Trump has you by the gonads because he did you a favor that you could maybe go to prison for, so I'll keep my mouth shut, but now you owe me, right? Or it's blackmail. Dude, I know all about you and the horse. I'm just saying, you don't want people to know about that. So, and in Ron DeSantis's case, it could be election rigging, or it could be secret peccadillos he doesn't want people to know about, or it could be both. But I suspect that the fear of prison may be the biggest fear of all, right? Because his lily white soft behind is not going to do well in prison. And I don't know how he'd get himself out of it if it's bad enough. I don't understand election laws, and if you can actually go to prison for this stuff. So if you know better, please by all means put it in the comments below. But let's keep an eye on this, and this may be one of the things that blows up by the end of the month, right? Or in the dates to watch in the next slide. So with that said, boys and girls, here's what I want you to keep an eye on. These are dates to watch. Now, looking backwards, May 25th and June 11th, 14th were pretty important days for him. With May 25th, there was, and certainly with June, there's a lot of Neptune going on here, right? Now, in May, he signed a Senate Bill 7072, which is about big tech and censorship and a lot to do with silencing politicians from saying garbage, thanks to you-know-who. And clearly, this was a favor for you-know-who. So that was interesting. So there's a lot of influence. There's a lot of that arm reaches long from wherever he's hiding his little swampy shadows, and he certainly has a good grip around DeSantis's neck, because DeSantis is definitely carrying water for him. Now, June 11th through 14th was also a critical date for DeSantis. I can't find any information, and I don't remember anything because I wasn't paying attention. I was distracted by other things. I've got things to do. So if you know or you can think of anything that was significant around those dates, please put them in the comments below. Now, immediately coming up, get your popcorn. August 20th to 30th, the ish is going to hit the fan in a big freaking way. So let's watch to see what happens these last 10 days of the month. Now, also too, just as a sidebar, that's gonna be a big one. As we move forward, let me get rid of this. The next dates coming up to watch are gonna be in October and December, and that closes out the year and we get into 2022. And there are some dates in 2022. Where's my paper? That are not on here. I'll give you those in a second. So October 10th, I want you guys to keep an eye on this. So Saturn's going to station direct opposing his Uranus, which is going to activate the Grand Cross in his chart. there is considering all of the pressure and stress he's under right now and ongoing, like watch what's happening through this month, especially the last week of August, the last 10 days of August. By the time we get to October, there is the real possibility that he may have a health breakdown as a result of all of this, because clearly he's not trying to rise up to the better way of doing things. So this will take its toll. Also, we may see a repeat of this or a continuation of these things as far as his health breaking down around the 24th of December and then into April 30th, or I'm sorry, March 20th specifically, and certainly April 30th. So we would watch for that, but I suspect that by the time we get to April 30th, it's going to be all over for him. So he will have his come to Jesus moment one way or the other. I just wished he had done it in a way that didn't involve hurting so many people. But what can you do, right? And this has been Down to Earth Astrology and Primal Girl Wellness, bringing you Astrology Investigates. So if you enjoyed this video, please by all means let me know by hitting the like button. If you'd like to get more notifications when things like come up, because we're always doing fun stuff around here. Well, I think they're fun. So if you'd like to come back and visit with us and get more notification when we do post videos, please hit the subscribe button. And if you know somebody who might enjoy this video, please by all means share. Although in honesty, I probably wouldn't, well maybe, I don't know, I probably wouldn't share it with people in Florida right now because they're suffering enough. But maybe this would be good for somebody in Florida. I don't know. Use your best judgment. Try not to increase more of their suffering. Good grief. People are in such a bad way because of other people's stupidities. It's painful, right? So let's not add to other people's suffering. And that's it. This is Miss Jenny, and I am your astrologer. This is Astrology Investigates, and we will see you guys soon.